Finally here, after 19 years, yes, we finally have the completion of the Evangelion Rebuild series. It's been a long time coming. I was super excited about this movie, jumped right into it. And while I have my issues, I do think it was a great conclusion to everything. But this is my review of the movie. Now, I debated if I was going to bother doing a spoiler-free segment, because I think if you are invested at this point and you've gone through all the series or the movies, you're going to watch this. And I think anybody that hasn't watched anything is probably going to have struggles with watching a review of a final movie just because you have so much context there that could spoil things prior to it. But if I had to give you guys my spoiler-free thoughts on this series, it's definitely worth a watch. I think if you haven't watched any of the rebuilds, I think it's definitely worth it. If you have not watched the original series, there's no reason why you can't jump right into the movies, because it does technically retell the original movie, or the original series, just kind of changes how it concludes. So, yeah, definitely worth a watch, visually pleasing. There was some issues in this movie that I think were there visually, but I think overall it's up to debate if it's a better ending than the original TV series and the original movies. I think it does. I think they both offer their own thing, personally. I even think I'm going to be getting into the manga just so I can get what that decides to do for its conclusion, because I heard that was different. But yeah, it does a really incredible job of putting a book into this whole thing. I mean, the question really is going to come up, is this something that's just going to be feeding into this unending cycle? And I think it does come to an awesome conclusion. Now, do I think that they'll never do another sequel? No. I mean, it's one of those things where it is subtitled that it is Goodbye to Evangelion. Almost feels like Anno himself is saying, I'm done with this thing, stop making me do it. But let's all be honest. Evangelion will always be a cash cow. They will always still do stuff. This is not going to be the end of it. Just from a marketing standpoint, just from a company and money standpoint, there's no way they're not going to do something with Evangelion in the future. Maybe a side story, something. Magic happens, stuff all starts over. You know, that stuff always happens. We'll have a rebuild in like 2 months. But anyways, it was a fantastic conclusion to it. Looked great. Great character moments. I think there was probably one character that didn't make sense in the end. But for the most part, a lot of great character moments in this particular series, or this particular movie specifically. If you want to know my really only issue with this movie in general, besides, like I said, one character kind of not making sense in the end, there was an issue with the combat sequences. I did not like a lot of the fights. They just didn't feel like they had the weight and the impact that Evangelion's always had. Like, I still, to this day, remember all the sounds, all the special effects, the music, the impact, the way the animation made the Eva specifically look. You felt the ginormous nature of these things. You felt how big and impactful they were. I mean, the joke goes around that a footstep from an Evangelion would probably kill people nearby, but it was still one of those things of like, you felt the impact through your screen. And these fights didn't feel like that. They felt like toys. And that was probably my biggest upset in this entire movie, was that while I enjoyed the story, while I enjoyed the characters, while I enjoyed the conclusion, while I enjoyed everything in it, the fights themselves were just, yeah, there was some cool moments. Let me make clear, there was some cool moments, but the fights themselves, they felt like toys. Now, there was a joke part in there that makes sense. I know, and I understand that. So if you have watched the movie and you're thinking of that one moment, I do understand that, and I'll get into that in my spoiler segment. But I mean, these fights with just thousands of things flying everywhere, they were all like super choreographed looking, and all the shots and everything was so like perfectly circular and stuff. It just didn't feel like a fight. It felt like I was watching a bullet hell game. Like, it didn't feel like a cool fight. They just felt like CGI flying all over the place. And that really is the biggest problem, is this, at this point, Studio Khara is using so much CGI, it has lost the artistry, in my opinion, in a lot of regards. And again, there's a lot of really spectacular visual pieces in this series, a lot of really cool moments that got me hyped up. But the battles overall were just kind of a letdown. And I know I'm going to probably get a lot of heat from that, but just hear me. I think that there was a lot of great potential in the movie, and I loved a lot of the scenes, and I loved everything it did. It's just, I did feel halfway through the movie like, this feels unsatisfying, and that sucks. For a finale, it sucks. So, yeah, overall, like I said, if you have not watched any of it, definitely go watch it. That's literally probably all I'll do for my spoiler-free segment, because I really do want to start getting into other things that I don't want to speculate around spoiler-free areas. So if you have not watched the movie, this is your warning. After beyond this point, I'm going to start getting into spoiler stuff, getting more into my thoughts of things. Maybe not spoil everything, but I just don't want to the possibility of spoiling things, and I'm probably gonna get into a lot. Yeah, I'm gonna get into the ending. So yeah, don't watch beyond this point if you have not watched it. So yeah, opening things up again, we kind of got jump right into Paris, and they are essentially trying to release this seal again and kind of re-clear this area. It was an okay segment. I'm not too. I like the creativity that he particularly has with this particular moment right here, having like almost like the circumference arms thing going on that Mari has to pilot with. But again, that goes back to my earlier, my issues earlier that I was talking about, where it just kind of feels like it's just basically a rotation of bullets going off and not really any kind of strategy to the fighting. Again, this is going to be like an ongoing theme for a lot of these things. I think this was probably my first upset for combat sequences. I love the whole segment with the battleships themselves being turned into a shield, and the cannon and piercing the gun itself. All that stuff was really cool, but for the most part, this was like my first kind of upset to the combat sequence. It's not really feeling more like it's just throwing stuff around, not really a cool strategic fight. I mean, my mind goes back to, yeah, again, like with the first segments, with the first footsteps of the Evangelion, or the Eva unit. But yeah, like the fight with Asuka and the military, her like just tearing up stuff. It was just like these great little moments that I just watch over and over again. And this just didn't really feel like one I'm ever going to go back and watch. But yeah, after this, we go into like a pretty quiet segment with Rei, Asuka, and Shinji. Pretty much Shinji being Shinji. I've always been a defender of Shinji and his mindset, but I will admit at this point, I'm like, how many times are we going to go down this road, Shinji? Shinji is a very emotional character, and I will admit, with this one having probably about a fifth of this movie being him sitting in a corner, yeah, at some point you're like, get over it, dude. But no, I was fine with it, mainly because in this whole segment, I loved the segments with the Rei Ayanami character, pretty much just trying to learn about humankind, learn about phrases, learn about doing things, working, planting, thinking, all these gestures that she's learning. And it did shock me with her kind of finally losing her form. I was pretty upset about that whole thing, but it was a cool segment. It was kind of me sparking my love for Rei Ayanami just as a kind of emotionless doll type character, which technically is not really the same Rei. I know that. And Asuka obviously beating the crap out of Shinji and forcing him to eat. I loved it. I thought it was great. I've always been a fan of Asuka. I think early on I had a love for Rei Ayanami, but Asuka definitely, especially going into the rebuilds, I think I had a falling in love with Asuka as a character. Loved Ayanami. Her taking a bath in the plug suit and everybody yelling at her. You have to take that off first. Yeah, we got to learn that Toji got with the class rep. Got to see Kinsuke. Got to learn that Misato and Kaji had a kid, and they named him Kaji, oddly. At some point, the wheelie kind of freak shows up. They take off in the ship, and they go towards the South Pole, where apparently Nerve is heading towards, so they can go to essentially where the ground zero was. And you'll find out loud, this is all pretty much Gendo had everything planned. He was always thinking about the idea of bringing them all in there just to do this. And I always love these kind of plot lines where they go, oh, we fell right into their trap. And it's like, you were dodging bullets left and right. You could have died before then. And then the plan of you falling into these traps wouldn't have worked out. But that's fine. It was all part of Gendo knew that they were going to dodge all those bullets and dodge all those attacks just to get down there and become a part of this whole system. So, well, okay, sure. Yeah, Gendo changed a lot. His face was pretty screwed up. He's pretty much given up his humanity in all ways. But again, this kind of gets back to my frustrations. This whole battle segment with the ships, none of it felt weighty. None of it felt. It was just a lot of CGI stuff flying around, and yeah, all this stuff was kind of a blur for me. I didn't really care much for any of the battleship kind of fighting sequences because of how visually it looked. But yeah, and even Asuka and Mari shooting down there and going through the bullet hell of units. All that stuff was kind of bleh. But yeah, once they finally got down to the ground, some pretty cool little moments down there. Apparently Marty with a whip. I don't remember having a whip in the previous one. And this was interesting because when Asuka tried to attack it, an AT field came up, and it wasn't the AT field from the unit, it was the AT field from hers. So essentially her own unit was essentially terrified and blocking herself. So that's when she pretty much releases her limiters. We finally get the release of the limits, and she becomes an angel basically and starts going crazy, and yeah, it doesn't work out. She ends up getting taken out, absorbed by Unit 13, and that's when we have the conversation with Gendo, and what was it? Ritsuko like starts shooting, knocks off his mask, and you get to see his like picking up his own brains. That was kind of weird. Yeah, everything's going to heck, and that's when Shinji kind of shows up and says, "Hey, I'll pilot it." Everybody's really upset about this. Everybody's kind of like, "No, you killed my family. No, it's going to cause nothing but pain." But I think this was like it's one of those moments where it's like, Masato, you probably should have said this a long time ago. Like Masato's like, "No, look. He did everything to keep us from dying a long time ago. If it weren't for Shinji, we'd have all been dead a long time ago. Basically, it was my orders. Taking all the blame upon herself, basically." And that's when, of course, Shinji gets in there and goes down and goes for the final battle with Daddy. And this is my next part, that Shinji's battle with Gendo was both cool, creative, and frustrating at the same time. It was great because they had this first segment where they're both like a mirror image of, you know, the Unit 1 and Unit 13, and they're fighting, and I'm like, oh, bad CGI, oh, gross. And then at some point I'm like, wow, the buildings themselves are toppling over like toys. And then yeah, you realize this is really just technically it trying to manifest an image of something that they would be able to comprehend, and it's basically creating stuff from their own minds. And it ends up being a movie set. Like, these are literally toys. This is like a Godzilla set, and they were in it and fighting, and there's like a blue screen or a backdrop and everything they fall into. And it's like, yeah, okay, sure, you got me. I was getting mad, and then I'm like, okay, never mind, that was intentional. The jumps between all the different scenes was really cool. I did like that, you know, having these big, huge Evangelion units fighting each other in like different rooms and stuff and different places they know. Was really cool. And then that's at some point, like, they finally get a moment where they were fighting. Yeah, they were fighting in the village that they showed at the beginning of the movie. And that's where I started seeing that feeling of impact and weight. And I'm like, there it is. This is what I know they can do. This cool animation and use of impact. And you could see the ground itself shifting around them when there's these colossal machines. So I was super happy again. I'm like, yeah, cool. This is what I love. But after Shinji kind of gives up and he realizes, you know, that this is not going to be solved by fighting. We're going to have to talk this out. That's when it kind of, he pulls out of Gendo the fact that Gendo essentially is him. Like, and it was funny because they literally laid out the end of this almost exactly like they laid out the end of the TV series. Like, the whole train scene, just the unfinished frames, the unfinished cuts, everything looked like it was played out to mimic exactly how they told Shinji's insecurities at the end of the original TV series. Which, again, on one hand, I praise and I think it's really cool, but on the other hand, I hate that. I think it's the laziest crap. And it frustrated me even more because later on they did it again. This whole idea of Shinji does his wish and then they has him sitting on this beachside and then they do that unfinished frame stuff again. I despise it. I think it pulls me out of the show itself, which maybe that was the intention of it, because as you kind of see with the very end of it, it kind of has it transition to the real world. But I didn't like it. I like the nod it gives to the original TV series, but it as a standalone movie, it's like, why would you devalue and undercut the quality of this movie to mimic that? It's like that. It's that artistic choice versus, I guess, quality, or not really quality, but just focusing so much on reference that you essentially ruin the finished product. And so again, that's one of those things where I'm sure a lot of people will be angry. I'm mixed on it, honestly. I'm frustrated by it, but at the same time, I love it. So don't get me wrong. But I do have to take note of it. It did frustrate me. And essentially what I got from this ending segment was that at some point Gendo realizes that he had Yui with him all along, and it was really with Shinji. and he left Shinji behind, and I think that kind of frustrated him. So it almost felt as if Gendo gave up. Like, it wasn't that Gendo was defeated, it almost felt like Gendo gave up. And, of course, when Masato gets the other spear created, drives it in there, Shinji grabs it, and that gives him the wish in which he wishes that all Evangelions yeah, the remove of all Evangelions. Because Evangelions were the problem with the world. I don't know. I understand, but I don't. I kind of wonder if that's one of those things where maybe you have to really listen to the original Japanese of it or something. But Evangelions weren't the issue with. I mean, yeah, you could make an argument that Shinji himself hated piloting the Evangelions. So if the Evangelions weren't around, he don't have to worry about piloting them. But why? Like, why not the angels? Why not everything else that's causing a problem? Why Evangelions? It's the whole argument that you're essentially like, well, there's a lot of wars in the world, so let's get rid of guns. Well, they'll find something other way of being able to fight each other. It wasn't really the guns that caused the war, it's the people that caused the war. They've been doing war long before guns were around. It's that argument. But I don't know, maybe I'm missing something with the origins of everything, that the angel... Maybe I'm missing that the Evangelions caused the angels to come. I don't remember that being an aspect originally, but that the Evangelions were built to counter the angels. That was always my understanding, that we're essentially made from the same kind of thing. So if it's a chicken and egg thing, it's the angels first. So that doesn't make sense to me. That just means that eventually the angels are going to come and the Evangelions aren't going to be there, and they're dead. So that was it is one of those things where you just kind of have to assume that was Anno. That was Hideaki Anno. Like, and again, this is one of those issues where I love it, but I hate it at the same time. If Shinji wishing that the Evangelions were gone, is that Hideaki Anno saying that he's like Shinji wanting the Evangelion to be out of his life? Like, he does not want to make anything more Evangelion. I'm going to make the main character wish to get rid of the thing that I don't want to do anymore. If that's the case, then, again, that is funny and it's interesting, but at the same time, you ruin your movie with that. Like, that's the artistic aspect of ruining your own thing for a message, at the same time making it incomprehensible and not make sense to the story itself. Why would Mari be okay with the Evangelions being gone when, I don't know, her entire character seems to be centered around Evangelions? I don't know. It's weird. It's weird, but at the same time, I'm fine with it. I mean, it had a great little conclusion to it, just because them being gone, it kind of goes back to a world that's kind of refreshed itself. Everybody's kind of going on with their lives in this new world. Not sure why Mari shows up and takes Shinji away, and they run off into again, seems like our world. It almost feels like it's one of those things where it's implying that Shinji and Mari are, and it seems like Kaoru and Rei are off the distance. Shinji and Mari are now in our world because they left behind their world that had the Evangelions. So essentially his wish created our world where he no longer has to worry about Evangelions. Sorry, dude, you have to worry about other stuff in this world. You gave up Evangelions for other crap, so welcome to our world. Which does make me wonder why Mari. I think there's probably going to be a lot of discussion about the Mari x Shinji thing. I don't really understand the Mari Shinji thing, unless it's just hey, she was there at the very end, so obviously she's there to grab his hand in the other world. But like, why purposely show Mari, Rei, and Kaoru? Where's Asuka? Where's Misato? Where's all these other characters that you could have shown in this other world? Why specifically these 3 characters, or these technically 4 characters? I thought that was kind of an odd choice. I don't know. Maybe showing Rei and Kaoru was necessary because you pretty much deemed them being gone, and so it was kind of a need to show them. I don't know. I should have Asuka. Asuka should have been there. Asuka was a better fit. And it was funny because I almost thought that they were implying that Asuka wouldn't be in this other world because she was a clone. But they showed Rei. Again, technically Kaoru was sort of. I don't know. In the end, it's odd choices. But overall, like I said, the entirety of it was a great conclusion. Some cool fights, some very clever uses of some of the fights. Overall, disappointed in a lot of the fights. Great character moments. Love the conclusions of a lot of the characters. A lot of the kind of interesting little reveals, like Asuka being a clone, which I didn't really necessarily think was going to be a thing, but apparently is. Yeah, it definitely had me wanting to go back and rewatch the entire thing again. I kind of wish that I did before I came into this. I just kind of did a refresher on it. But overall, really enjoyed it. But that's my thoughts on Evangelion 3.0 plus 1.0. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like down below. Comment, let me know what you thought of the movie. Subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you all for watching, and y'all take care.